المتحدث الدكتور الحاجي يعمل حالياً في المملكة المتحدة رئيساً لمدرسة الدراسات العليا في كلية المكتوم للتعليم العالي، وهو حاصل على الدكتوراه من بريطانيا في التدريس وفي التعليم العالي. عمل في العديد من البرامج، وهو زميل بأكاديمية التعليم العالي في المملكة المتحدة. له العديد من الأنشطة، خاصة فيما يتعلق بتطوير المناهج الدراسية. من 92 إلى 95 حصل على درجة البكالوريوس، ومن 95 إلى 98 حاصل على درجة الماجستير. عمل في كثير من المجالات، وله اهتمامات متعددة، ومن ضمن هذه الاهتمامات ما يتعلق بالمتعلمين وكيف يمكن نقل هذه العمليات التعليمية لهؤلاء المتعلمين ونقلها للعالم الآخر، أو نقلها للآخرين الغير مسلمين. له اهتمامات بهذا الجانب. لدينا من الوقت كامل المحاضرة ساعة، وسوف نعطي المتحدث مدة نصف ساعة، وباقي الوقت سيكون للمداخلات. تفضل سعادة الدكتور.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم، والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. أما بعد، السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Thank you very much once again for this very hospitable accordance to us, and for this kind invitation to attend in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. I'm very pleased and honored to be amongst the scholars and experts in the field of education. I have chosen this topic based on my experience in terms of living in different parts of the world, in Africa, in Asia, and now in Europe, and learning and seeing different philosophies of education, and looking at them comparatively, seeing the similarities and differences, the strengths and weaknesses in all these philosophies. And I've been involved in terms of developing some programs at different levels. The first experience I had was 1997 in Malaysia, and I was fortunate to be part of a committee that developed the curriculum for the International Islamic School in Malaysia, Kuala Lumpur. And that has given me the opportunity to interact and discuss with experienced professors and the practitioners in the field of education. And that particular school has become one of the most successful international Islamic schools in the whole of Malaysia, if not the most important and most successful. And many models has been put on that. I have chosen the relation between the teacher and the student because of a lot of difficulties sometimes we get in terms of bringing about knowledge. Because I think the common denominator between the teacher and the student is the creation, the production, and the promotion of knowledge. And therefore, this relationship has to be based on the concept of partnership, I think, and not one of master and servant or subject and object, but rather a very good partnership relationship between the two important people of this. Introduction. This paper is based on what is referred to in education as action research. So I want to base my arguments on a very important educational theory called action research, or some people will call it reflective learning and teaching. How our teaching practices are informed by research, and how the research is also informed by our action, our practice in terms of teaching. How do we review ourselves? How do we see our strengths? How do we see our weaknesses? How do we rectify ourselves? This is to say, perspectives concluded from experience closely related to the practitioner researcher experience, and indeed a manifestation of dialectic interplay between practice, reflection, and learning. So there is a very interesting interplay here between practice, reflection, and learning. You teach, you go and reflect and see what you have done very well and what you have done badly to be able to change and review and to produce very good results. This social interaction in teaching involves dealing with different people with different attitudes. And of course, as a teacher, you are dealing with people from different cultural backgrounds, different levels of understanding, different attitudes. How do you deal with this complexity in a teaching classroom situation? Thus, a teacher has to be sensitive to different personalities and age groups they come in contact with in order to make scholarship as creative work and enable learners to think, communicate, and learn. How do we make this learning process a creative, innovative process? Not something boring, but something innovative and creative. Thus, learning and knowledge creation does not only tap into the stock of human knowledge, but also to prepare the whole educational learning environment. So we are not only there to tap into knowledge, but also to prepare the whole educational learning environment. What environments do we create? Normally, if I go for examination, at simple level, high level, even the environment, that simple environment, how do we arrange the classroom? It's very important. Do you make it interactive or not interactive? So that's very important in terms of educational learning environment. Thus, learning and knowledge creation does not only tap into the stock of human knowledge, as I said, but also to prepare the whole educational learning environment. I've said it already. I will divide this into 4 themes. The role of teacher as an entrepreneur, and then as an agent of change, the relationship between the two, teacher and student, and then action research. Very, very briefly, because I have only 30 minutes to talk. The role of a teacher as an entrepreneur. I'm using this symbolically, metaphorically, majazan, أستعمل يعني كلمة entrepreneurship, majazan, ليس حقيقة. This concept has been used metaphorically to highlight the following points: that the teacher has to be an excellent promoter and facilitator of knowledge, creation, production, delivery, and transformation. So there's a very important educational concept here. We don't only stop at creation of knowledge, but also how do we transform the learners? How do we add values? Myself and other colleagues here emphasize the importance of value in education, because they become the leaders. We want to make knowledge society. On what basis? On what values? On what philosophies? All these, I think, are important in this particular thing. Also, in that particular category as well, the ability of the teacher to demonstrate demonstrate innovative skills in coordinating and organizing the resources at his or her disposal. Sorry, there's typing error at the disposal. How do you manage, effectively? And this is very important in education management. You have limited resources, you have big resources. How do you manage them, successfully in the educational process? Arguably, the role of the teacher in the symbolic senses of an entrepreneur must potentially result to increase in the value of the product. The teacher and the student, they are here to produce something called knowledge. That knowledge can have different levels of what we call quality. Low quality, high quality, all these, I think, is the role of a teacher. It's like a business person. How do you market your product? How do you add value to your product? All these are important in terms of education. The role of a teacher as a facilitator. As a facilitator, the teacher will be required to consider the following points. Willingness to self-correct, self-criticism, and not be dirty. I think this is very important, We've got to be able to criticize ourselves. What have I done wrong? What has gone wrong? What have I done well? Of course, to reinforce that. Willingness to share credit, credit. Good things you have done to share with other people, Good examples, For example, in Malaysia, for example, you have smart schools, which have done very well. How other, institutions could imitate or could learn from those excellent and successful smart schools. And then willingness to break free of established structures. Here we are talking about change. I think it is very difficult to change. Some of the teachers, not only teachers also, but also even bureaucrats, for example, they've been used to using certain traditional methods of learning, of teaching. But how can we change our methods? So we've got to be able to break free of established structures, to have that ability to change, to learn, because it's an ongoing process. Whether we are learning or teaching, every day as a learner, as a teacher, you learn new values, new methods, new methodologies, new approaches. And then willingness to cross disciplines. And this is important. What we call multidisciplinary, interdisciplinary approach to learning. As a teacher, you might be specialized in Arabic literature, for example, but also be able to know issues about history, about geography, and so on and so forth, about civic society and things like that. So that cross-cultural, cross-disciplinary approach is very important in the educational process. Theme 2, teachers as agents of change. Teachers, of course, the motto of the conference is that the teacher is central, is the most important person in this knowledge creation. So they are agents of change, and I think even when we read the Quran, has emphasized about that. Inna Allah la yughayyiru ma biqawmin hatta yughayyiru ma bi anfusihim. So change is very important. It has to come from within. You've got to be convinced that change is a very positive thing. Change is the only thing that doesn't change. So change is change. It is there. We cannot avoid it. There are a lot of challenges we face. We've got to be able to face up to them. Teachers can and must play an important role in bringing about and promoting change in terms of the new skill sets. There are new skills. How do we, accommodate these changes? Mindsets, development of learning and further learning laboratories. Learning and teaching is like a laboratory. All of us, we have accumulated experience over years. We have been dealing with our senior colleagues, who are our mentors, and we have learned from them, and some of our colleagues are also learning from us. So it's an ongoing process. It's never ending. You will never reach the end of the curve. And previous classes as experiments of improving subsequent classes. Your first class in the morning should allow you to consider the areas that need improvement, that need further improvement, that need change. Encourage their students to be independent thinkers. I underline that. I think one of the critical issues for us as teachers is to allow and encourage and develop the ethos of independent thinking in our students. And this is very crucial in the high stages of learning, from primary school to high school to university, BA to masters. And you can see this at play, from students from different cultural backgrounds, in terms of developing those skills of independence. Because you will write your own master's thesis. You write your own PhD thesis. Nobody will write it for you. Your supervisor will help you in terms of your methodological thinking, but in the end is the student who will need to develop those independent skills. The teachers must actively engage in the learning teaching processes in order to encourage the students. I think continually and continuously, teachers should be able to engage with the students in the learning and teaching processes in order to encourage the students. The teachers, as facilitators, in exploring individual talents of their students. Students are very intelligent. They have many talents, hidden talents, Qudrat Kamina, that need to be brought to light and guide them appropriately to nurse their potential to the fullest growth. How do we able, and this is important because sometimes we can demotivate our students. We can discourage them from thinking critically, from thinking independently, from harnessing their potentials. So I think it is very important to encourage our students. I think I like what one of the brothers said here, is tasa'ul and not su'al. Raising questions continuously to be able to be thinking and questioning, and not only receiving, but also questioning why. And of course, within the Quranic tradition, again, you find a lot of references in the Quran about people reflecting and thinking and challenging and reflecting. Theme 3, the teacher-learner relations. And this is very crucial. Of course, there are many theories in terms of teacher-learner or student relations, whether it is student-centered, whether it is teacher-centered, but I think it's a combination. Let's not kid ourselves. It's a combination of both. Learning should be both teacher-centered and student-centered. They are the partners. They are the main stakeholders, if I may use that economic term, in terms of the learning process. This social interaction, social engagement in teaching and learning involves dealing with different students with different attitudes and perhaps perceptions. Students have perceptions and attitudes. How do we deal with those? Thus, a teacher has to be sensitive to different personalities. These personalities of their students. Some of them, they are highly motivated, some are less motivated, and so on and so forth. So how do we change that as well into something positive, into something good, for the students? So therefore, teachers should be able to create that environment, that conducive environment whereby students will be able to express themselves, will be able to ask some of the questions. I normally tell my students, I am not guru of wisdom. I am not master of wisdom. I'm trying to understand. I'm trying to know. Let's think together. One of my students, I can just give an example, came, with many questions because of the media, and said, what does Islam say about capital punishment? What does Islam say about this punishment? What does Islam say about that? I said, do you want me to answer the question or to think together with you? And everybody laughed. So we are not there all the time to answer all the questions, but we make them think together with us as our partners in that learning and teaching process. Those teachers has to be sensitive to different personalities, as I said, and of course age groups. What you give to somebody in the kindergarten, somebody age 3, somebody age 5, somebody age 7, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. So there are different age groups, very crucial, very important, that you've got to take into consideration. There are things you tell your master's students, you cannot tell somebody in high school. So everybody, according to their level, according to their need, you will be able to understand all that. Thus, learning and knowledge creation, transmission, and transformation do not only tap into the stock of human knowledge, this is what I said, but also to prepare the whole educational learning environment. How do we create an environment which will help everybody to learn and learn? Teaching and learning processes. How do we create, for example, the classroom conducive? How do we, the personalities involved as well, from the lowest administrator to the highest administrator, from the youngest teacher to the oldest teacher. All of us should be making the environment conducive for the learners, what we call the educational infrastructure. What infrastructure do you make? You know, it's not only the building, the personalities, the quality assurance, and that's very important. All these things are important. How do you evaluate? How do you make fairness among students? This is important. Students are very sensitive. You know, how do you answer questions? You know, how do we evaluate the feedback of the students? All these are important in terms of encouraging a good environment between students and teachers as well. The teacher should therefore be conversant, be knowledgeable with the factors, the variables that influence student learning. What makes somebody highly motivated? How makes somebody less motivated? How do you make the class interesting sometimes? All these things are important for the teacher to be knowledgeable about in terms of learning, in order to be able to build in them the capacity relevant for their individual development and the society at large. What factors do we create in terms of allowing our students to be able to harness their capacity, their ability relevant for their individual development and the society at large? And this is important, you know, for example, do we create, you know, produce students who are not relevant to the society? And this is a very important, crucial question here. You know, the independence of the teacher, the needs of the students, the needs of the society. So there are many forces here that come together to make this development possible at the level of the society. In pursuance of this objective, the teacher needs to identify unique student characteristics, such as student understanding of the subject, their level of knowledge of the subject, individual differences. You know, in one class of 20, there are different students, different personalities, different approaches, you know, different levels of understanding. So you've got to consider all these individual differences and previous learning experience of the students. For example, you might get a student, a young people from a different environment. How do you deal with them? For example, I experienced, for example, somebody came to one of the schools, one of my relatives, you know, who was born in the Gulf, and he came and lived with me, my own nephew, at the age of 6 years. And he spent about 3 months with me. And we have to take him to school. So how do you prepare somebody from a different linguistic background as well? He comes from an Arab country, the language is Arabic, and now a different environment, the language is English. So they have bilingual person who knows the needs of that particular child. So this is very important, again, in terms of settling in, how you settle in a new student in a new learning environment. My last theme is the actual research and classroom learning. For me, this is a very useful tool to improve my teaching and to improve the learning of my student. What is meant by action research in education? What is the purpose of it? How can it help in stimulating students' interest? There are many definitions. I don't want to go into that because I have limited time. but I will give you the common thread that crosses the different definitions of research, action research. The common thread weaving through the definitions, however, is the reciprocal connection between action or practice and ideas or theories or reflections. How do we connect the idea with the practice? Very nice educational theories, but are they relevant? That's why here comes danger of importing a certain educational theory without knowing the context. The cultural context is very important. We've got to be critical learners, critical teachers. How do we adjust, adapt this particular theory to our situation? Within one country, there are different variations. There are different little cultural differences here and there. So all these are important when we teach and when we learn. So it's very important. How do we connect the theory with the practice and our reflections as well? Shani and Basma define action research as follows. Emergent inquiry process in which applied behavioral science knowledge is integrated with existing organizational knowledge and applied to solve real organizational problems. It is simultaneously concerned with bringing about change in organization. Of course, some of these theories have been taken from behavioral psychology and so on and so forth. And how do we apply them into effective educational methods and tools? This is a very important debate among human scientists and social scientists, for example. Who first invented this particular theory? You can have a theory, for example, in political science. The same theory has been used in sociology, but in different variations and different adaptations. But basically, how do we use this in improving our organizations, in bringing about positive changes in our organization? It can be personal, it can be at the level of the institution, it can be at the level of the country, and so on and so forth. For example, when I did my postgraduate certificate in higher education in the UK, it was very theoretical, but also very practical. Somebody will come and observe my teaching. My colleague will come and observe my teaching and gives me feedback. And I also will video my teaching for 5-10 minutes and then reflect on my teaching. Have I been using my hands too much? Have I been writing too much on the board? Have I been putting many sentences together? Have I been speaking very fast? All these things we learn from, and this will improve our teaching and learning. Dick, for example, defined action research as a family of research methodologies which pursue action or change and research or understanding at the same time. Research and practice at the same time. So for me, this is a cyclical pattern, a cyclical approach to learning and teaching. I teach, I reflect, I plan, I change. So it's a continuous cycle that doesn't finish. Every time I'm reviewing myself. It could be, of course, every time, every class, you review yourself. And of course, at the level of the institution, we can review a whole course, for example, mathematics, for example, Arabic language, English language, sciences. We can review the packages as well at the level of the institution. Me as a person as well, I can also...
5 دقائق دكتور.
Thank you very much. So the above definitions focus mainly on the cyclical process of action itself, pointing out the give and take interactions we learn from our students as well as they learn from us, which exists between method and critical reflection. The method and the critical reflection on the methods. Of course, procedures of action research, there are 2 basic steps or procedures that are generally involved in all forms of action research, irrespective of the context and purpose. The first is the diagnostic stage, to diagnose the action. Number 2, the therapeutic stage, in which the hypotheses are tested by consciously directed intervention. So there are 2 ways, the diagnosis and the therapy. What is the problem? Analysis of the problem and giving solutions to the problem. So it's going to be a continuous process. Action research in general is to create a knowledge that is practically driven and knowledge that could potentially help individuals and society at large. Conclusion. The centrality of the role of the teacher in knowledge creation, knowledge transformation, and provision of a conducive environment for the learning process. There is a need for the teacher to be conversant with the factors that influence student learning in order to be able to build in them the capacity relevant for their individual development and the society at large. This will therefore require teachers to have systematic innovation, al-ibtikar, visionary, الرؤى, واضحة, and organizational skills. All these are important in terms of this particular thing. The paper has also highlighted an important educational theory referred to as action research. It's argued that it is relevant in that it helps the practitioner, the teacher, to evaluate and assess the stability or otherwise of the methods, approaches that they use. And thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Al-Haji, for this nice presentation. شكرا دكتور الحاجي. سمعنا مصطلحات مهمة جدا، والزميلات والزملاء أنتم قيادات تربوية تعليمية، والموضوع مهم للغاية. العلاقة بين المعلم والطالب داخل الصف، والرولز اللي القواعد أو المقترحات أو القوانين اللي ذكرها الدكتور، هذه يعني يتهيأ لي هذه تأخذنا إلى داخل الصف، وأن كنا جالسين في هذه القاعة، لكن بالنسبة لي أنا جالس أتخيل الصف، الكلاس روم، وماذا يحدث داخل الصف. Learning and teaching, values. How do we add values to education? Teacher as a facilitator, change, independent thinkers. هذه جميعها مصطلحات في غاية الأهمية. وكما تعلمون حاليا بين أيدينا في المملكة العربية السعودية محتوى جديد في جميع التخصصات. نتمنى يوجد من أبنائنا وبناتنا هؤلاء الثينكرز في مختلف المجالات. الآن الوقت المتبقي هو للمداخلات. إن سمحتوا لي نبدأ نبدأ من القاعة النسائية لسبب، لأن الحضور كان قبلنا في هذه الساعة المتأخرة، فمعلش نبدأ إذا في مداخلة من القاعة النسائية، ولعل الذي يتحدث يوجز وتكون يعني ما نريد أن نطرحه واضح، وأيضا في وقت يعني لا يتجاوز الدقيقة، ويا ليت يذكر الاسم والجهة. فنسمع من القاعة النسائية إذا في مداخلة ولا في عندنا عدد من
السلام عليكم.
عليكم السلام ورحمة الله.
هند محمد المعيوف من منطقة القصيم. أحب أن أسأل، رغم التنويع في طرق التدريس وفي وسائل التعليم، إلا أن المشكلة الكبيرة التي نواجهها الآن عدم وجود الدافعية لدى الطالب للتعلم. يعني رغم تحفيزنا ورغم جهودنا نبذلها مع أغلب الطلاب، إلا أنه نجد أن الطلاب ليس لديهم دافعية أو رغبة للتعلم. شكرا.
شكرا أستاذة هند. المتحدث يجيد اللغة العربية، يعني ما في إشكالية في هذا الأمر. خلونا ناخذ كمان ممكن سؤالين أيضا أو مداخلتين. مداخلة أخرى من القاعة النسائية.
السلام عليكم.
تفضلي.
It's Engineer Lujain الدندشي from King Faisal School. Please can we have a hard or soft copy of the presentation? Thank you.
شكرا. ناخذ مداخلتين من الزملاء. دكتور عامر.
السلام عليكم.
عفوا المايك يا.
السلام عليكم.
عليكم السلام ورحمة الله.
قائد التطوير المدينة المنورة فوز طباخ. طبعا هو أثار الأستاذ إلى عملية التغيير في البيئة المدرسية، فبس ودنا إنه يركز على الفرق بين مفهوم التغيير والتغير. كمان ذكر إنه المفترض يكون في المفكر المعلم والمفكر المتعلم ويفكروا سوياً. هل في آليات مناسبة واضحة لهالتفكير؟ يعني آلية التفكير، هل توجد طرق معينة لآلية تفكير تتم بين المعلم والمتعلم؟ شكراً.
شكرا. نكتفي بهذه المداخلات من القاعة النسائية. ناخذ مداخلة أو مداخلتين من القاعة الرجالية. الدكتور عامر.
بسم الله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله. Thank you, Dr. Al-Haji, for your thoughtful and beneficial presentation. I noticed that the title of your presentation is the relation between the teacher and the students in the processes of learning and teaching and education in general. I think I would add something to what you have presented. I may have missed it in the beginning, but there's a need to change in the attitude toward teaching and learning amongst teachers. This is one point. I think the teacher should understand their new students. I put new students between brackets. They are not the classical or traditional students. I think teachers should need to understand more about their students, about their expectations, about their needs, about their abilities, as you mentioned some of them, and the past experiences. The role of learner also should be mentioned in this point. The role of learner should be changed also. I want these variables to work together to have the good learning and good teaching. Thank you.
شكرا دكتور عامر. ناخذ المداخلة الأخيرة من الآن، ثم بعد إجابة الدكتور ممكن نرجع مرة أخرى للمداخلات أخرى. تفضل الزميل.
مالك بن طالب، مكتب اقرأ استشارات التربية والتعليمية. عادة ما يقيم المعلم من قبل المشرف التربوي أو من مدير المدرسة. ماذا لو كان تقييم المعلم من قبل الطلاب؟ هل سيكون لذلك إيجابية أم أن هناك سلبيات ممكن أن تحصل من خلال هذا التقييم؟
شكرا للزميل. تفضل دكتور الحاجي.
Thank you very much. I think these are very good questions. They will maybe require, I think, another reflection together from the sister in terms of the motivation of the learners and so on and so forth. Sometimes they're not motivated. I think what is important to highlight or students is that learning by itself is development of the personality, your personality. That's why I think in Arabic we have التعليم والتربية. Tarbiyah, that's why I recommend we can have maybe another conference on the philosophy of education. What is education? What is التربية, for example? Is it the same as التعلم? And so on and so forth. Tarbiyah, we have professors here from the Arabic word Rabb, Rabba, Yurabbi. So there is a spiritual dimension, in fact, in the concept of education from an Islamic philosophical point of view. And that's a very big area that need to be explored. So we can tell our students to motivate them that learning, education, gives you the ability to develop yourself spiritually, intellectually, personality-wise. All of us, let's go back, 20 years. How were we? How are we now? How have we changed? Learning and unlearning. You learn new things and unlearn other things. So it's learning and unlearning at the same time. It, of course, develops the individual at that level. So I think this will help us to encourage our students. In terms of methods of thinking through tafkir, I think from the very beginning, one of the speakers said here that we should tell our students from the very beginning, I don't necessarily know everything, every answer. Imam Malik, for example. Imam Malik, one of the classical Muslim scholars, one of the earliest Muslim jurists who was in Medina, as you know very well. They asked many questions. He said, I don't know. So we should have that courage to say, I don't know, come on, hold on, let me go and think. I'll give you the answer. I'll go and research, So this happens time to time, and we need to allow them that they are our partners. So that الشراكة بين الطالب والمتعلم مهمة جدا. لابد أن نغرس في طلابنا أهمية الشراكة في هذه العملية المعقدة. So this very complex process of education, we've got to include our students as part of that particular process. For my colleague, Doctor, thank you very much. In terms of attitudes of teachers, yes, I agree with him. We've got to change. As our students change, we also have to change. There are new factors, there are new variables, there are new issues, there are new problems, there are new challenges. There is a revolution of information, there is globalization, there is multiculturalism, there is the global village, or the universal village, whatever you call it. Distances have shrunk between people. Communication has changed drastically. One of the yesterday, one of the chairpersons I thank you very much. He reminded us, what was achieved, just 2010, 11, 12, more than what has been achieved for hundreds of years. So many things have changed. We've got to be ready to be part of that change for the benefit of our societies. It doesn't mean, you throw your values. It doesn't mean you throw your values, but to reflect on your attitudes, on your perceptions, on your methods to bring about a better change for your society. I think these are the main things that I have so far. In terms of taqeem, assessment, whether it has to be done from top, I think both can go together. There can be feedback from our students as well. That doesn't mean that of course, government is doing its own work as well. They have their own philosophies, they have their own strategies. But of course, we talked about that distance, that area of autonomy and independence should be given. And of course, I know it is given to the schools as well. So feedback of your student is very important. For us, end of every semester, we have feedback on every subject from our students. They tell us how the subject has been taught, how we have delivered, how is the content, have we achieved the aims and objectives, and the classroom, the books, the relevance, all these questions and we give them the freedom. We are not there. They've got to be independent. When they evaluate, it's anonymous. They don't write their names. And we take the forms for administration. They will summarize for us whatever the students have said, and it will come back to us. So the summary will come from a non-academic, from a non-teacher, from administrator, and then we'll write our own report and reflections on what has been done on us. So I think this is a very dynamic way of changing the way we teach and also to improve the way we also allow our students to also learn.
شكرا دكتور. أعتقد ما زال السؤال قائم، سؤال الأستاذة هند في تخيلي يعني ما زال قائم عن موضوع الدافعية، بس خلونا نأخذ الموضوع بشكل أبسط من الثيوريز. يعني خلونا يعني أغلب اللي موجودين جايين من المدارس، يعني عارفين احنا ما في شيء بالصف يعني أمثلة تجي يعني فت مع الموضوع هذا اللي احنا جالسين نتحدث عنه، اللي هو العلاقة بين المعلم والطالب. وعندنا أمثلة كثيرة أتوقع يعني من النماذج الناجحة الممتازة التي يعني لدينا، وتمكن عدد من المعلمين بقيادة عدد يعني في قيادة عدد من الطلاب إلى يعني وصلوا إلى يعني إبداع، ووصلوا إلى نتائج كثيرة. أعرف قصص كثيرة، واستمتعت في الحقيقة الثلاث أيام هذه أو اليومين هذه في المعرض بالطلاب اللي جو من المدارس من مختلف المراحل، من مراحل الدنيا إلى الثانوي وإلى الذين أتوا من الجامعات وغيرها. الطلاب عندهم حديث كثير جدا عن ما يجري داخل الصف، من ضمنها أحكي لكم بس أنا قصة واحدة حكاها لي أحد الطلاب، وهو يقول الطالب أن لاحظ تغير مرات الأداء داخل الحصة لما يكون يعني في ترتيب معين داخل الفصل غير الأيام العادية يعني. فهذه من الأمثلة اللي يتهيأ لي أن داخل الصف العلاقة كلما كانت العلاقة بسيطة وواضحة، وكما ذكر المحاضر وذكر الدكتور أيضا قرب الطالب من المعلم، يعني شعوره أنه يستطيع يسأل الكويتشنز هذه اللي هو يبي يطرح أسئلة، هذه يتهيأ لي من الأشياء دكتور المهمة، لأن احنا داخل الصف نتيح الفرصة لطلابنا وفي الجامعات أيضا وفي أماكن أخرى عشان نوصل إلى الثينكرز اللي أنت ذكرتهم. طيب ناخذ بعض المداخلات المرة هذه، معلش ناخذ من المايك. تفضل دكتور، تفضل الزميل.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. جبريل أبو جويش، رئيس قسم الإشراف التربوي في شركة الرياض للخدمات التربوية والتعليمية المتكاملة. حقيقة المناهج المطورة في المملكة تقوم على نظرية أساسية، وهي النظرية البنائية أو النظرية المعرفية التي كان من روادها بياجيه وبرونر وغيرهم. هذه النظرية تقوم على أساس التقليل من دور المعلم داخل الغرفة الصفية والزيادة من دور الطالب، بحيث نصل إلى معادلة 20-80، أن يكون دور المعلم داخل الفصل 20% فقط، وأن يكون الطالب له دور 80%. لذلك لنا تجربة رائدة في هذا الموضوع، وهو أن نوجد فكرة المتعلم المعلم، بمعنى أن يعطى الطلاب أدوارا في التعليم داخل الغرفة الصفية، يحضر مادة ما أو موضوعا ما ثم يأتي ويقدمه أمام زملائه، ويكون دور المعلم في هذه المرحلة هو الميسر والمبسط والمسهل للعملية. بالتالي يريح المعلم نفسه من عبء 24 حصة التي يعاني منها دائما، ويحصل على نتائج أفضل، ويسهم في خلق قيادات تربوية من هؤلاء الطلاب. ويعني كلمة أخيرة أوجهها لأخواني المعلمين: لا تستهينوا بقدرات طلابكم، تستطيع أن تعتمد على الطالب حتى من المرحلة الابتدائية إلى المرحلة الثانوية بأن يتقمص دورك كمعلم ويقدم شيء كبير قد لا تكون تتوقعه. شكرا لك يا أستاذ.
شكرا أستاذ جبريل. ناخذ مداخلة أخرى من هذه القاعة. تفضل الزميل هنا يعني.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. أخوكم عبد الله بن صالح المعتقي، الإدارة العامة للتربية والتعليم بالقصيم. الحقيقة أعجبني قول الدكتور: هل تريد أن أعطيك الإجابة أم أفكر معك؟ هذه الكلمة ألا ترى يا دكتور أنها تحتاج إلى تهيئة كبيرة بالنسبة للمعلمين بدل الإجابات الجاهزة المعلبة هذه؟ شكرا.
شكرا أستاذ عبد الله. ناخذ مداخلتين من القاعة النسائية.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
عليكم السلام ورحمة الله.
أختكم بدرية دامغ من محافظة رجال الماع. طبعا اعذروني إذا كانت طرحي في غير الموضوع لأني ما عندي سماعة ترجمة. سؤالي: متى يكون المعلم ظلا للمتعلم لا يفارقه أبدا؟ ومتى يشد المعلم الحبل الذي بينه وبين المتعلم ومتى يرخيه؟ بالنسبة واحد من الأخوان طرح أن يكون المتعلم المعلم. أنا طبعا مثلت هذا الدور عام 1396 مع معلمتي الفاضلة مضاوي صويان من عنيزة. كانت ونعم المعلمة التي ما زال ظلها إلى الآن معي. وشكرا.
شكرا أستاذة بدرية. ناخذ مداخلة أخرى ثم نعطي الدكتور الإجابة من القاعة النسائية أيضا.
أيوة السلام عليكم.
عليكم السلام ورحمة الله.
نورين سليمان من مدارس الرياض. بس كنت أحب أدي إضافة للزميلة اللي كانت بتسأل عن تحميس الطلاب للعمل بالكلاس. فكنت بس أحب أقول لها إنه الكلاس atmosphere or الenvironment itself هي بتشجع الطلاب على العمل، لأنه إحنا we made like we asked the students about what do they think of a good teacher, and they said like the teacher is the ones who loves her student, listens to them and hears them. Also the activities inside the class and the motivations يعني it helps them to يعني to want to learn. فلازم نخلق جو من التحفيز دائما inside the class عشان الطلاب يحبوا ان هم يشتغلوا داخل الفصل يعني. وشكرا.
شكرا دكتور الحاجي.
Thank you very much. I think most of the questions are very related in terms of motivating our students. I think one of the most important points to realize is that our students are very intelligent. It's like they're like our children. Children are very intelligent. They know who loves them and who don't love them. And I take the example from my father. My father was a teacher. He never beat any of us. Never ever beat any of us. Never shouted at any of us. Never insulted any of us. And the result has been generally very positive, really. And so I have learned from that, and I agree with you that we should not think our students are not intelligent. They are very, very intelligent. They are very, very creative. They have a lot of potential. So we've got to be facilitators to harness, to bring to light, those potentials, to, of course, praise them when they do, like your children. Of course, Imam al-Ghazali wrote a very interesting book, بين المعلم والمتعلم. It's like the role of the father and the child, or the mother and the child. It's one of love and compassion. You've got to be compassionate with them. You've got to love them, particularly at that very young age. All your students, from kindergarten until university level, they're like your children. This is the feeling I think, good and successful teachers have. In terms of the comment of our colleague, التفكير معاً, thinking together, is very important. And this has a lot of effect on the society. People, you ask them questions, every time they have answers in their pockets, ready-made, without thinking. So thinking is very good. And we have to develop this skill in our students. Sometimes they ask you questions, okay, allow them to think. Give them tasks, that will make them think. For example, of course, there are different levels. Probably middle school, high school, allow our students, prepare them to present, to present. Probably examinations, again, I think is another big educational area. We've got to review examination styles. Only people memorize, exam comes, they pour on the paper. And after one day, they forget. And learning education means what you can remember, what you have, what you can use in real life. That's real knowledge. That's the benefit to the society. So we've got to make them really think with us, and we've got to sometimes challenge them. Of course, challenge them positively. Challenge them positively to think. Okay, questions? What do you think? What do you think? And of course, you know, because that's why you are there, But of course, you don't know everything. We don't know everything. We know a little. لو كان البحر مدادا لكلمات ربي لنفذ البحر قبل أن تنفذ كلمات ربي ولو جئنا بمثل مدده. So this knowledge is very vast, So every day we learn and learn and learn. In terms of the environment, yes, it's very good. I said that and I emphasize that in the classroom, in the school, the environment should be very welcoming, should be one of a learning environment, and so on and so forth. One of an environment that encourages, critical thinking. Even the way, I have students coming for training to my institution. And they asked me, how do you want your classroom to be? I said, I want it to be circular, very interactive. So everybody facing each other, asking questions, and also thinking together and developing things together. So even the setting can also tell you a lot in terms of the environment.
شكرا دكتور. احنا ناخذ اخر مداخلتين من هذه القاعة ومن القاعة الأخرى.
السلام عليكم.
المايك يا.
السلام عليكم.
السلام.
عليكم السلام.
Yeah.
تفضل.
Yeah, my question is, are the steps? What are the steps that we are going to carry out if we are going to motivate our trainees or students effectively? And suppose we are in a higher education, and the output on the trainees requisites are very poor, and there is a dependent information that they have to get a build-up information, which depend on the information we are going to give to the new students. But those trainees, they are not fulfill the requirement before they get to the training. I mean that there are some requirement they did not fulfill. And then this new requirement depends on the trainees are going to give them. So how I will promote them and develop them to reach to the point that I can give them the new requirement or the new subject. And suppose that my question is that if there is an information that I'm going to give them depend on the previous information, and they did not fulfill the previous requirement, then how I will start them without losing the time? As you know, there is a time for deliver decision or deliver the curriculum. And if I go through this one and finish, they don't understand. And if I give them the basement, it will take some time.
شكرا. على أساس الوقت نأخذ مداخلة من القاعة النسائية أخيرة أو قبل الأخيرة.
السلام عليكم.
عليكم السلام ورحمة الله.
أميرة الدريبي من الدوادمي. أنا لي تجربة مع إعطاء الدروس المرحلة الابتدائية. مسكت منهج غير تخصصي، فاتفقت مع الطالبات كل 3 طالبات يحضرون درس ويلقون على زميلاتهم وأنا أشرف عليه. كانت تجربة حلوة، جميع الطالبات تفاعلوا وتحمسوا وصاروا يتنافسون حتى ابتكار الوسائل، أو يعني تقريبا طبقتها نصف الترم كامل، ولله الحمد يعني كانت تجربة رائعة. التجربة الثانية، أنا أصلا مدرسة علوم، أحيانا البنات في صف رابع وخامس يطرحون أسئلة يعني أحيانا ما تقدر تجاوب عليها، تكون يعني المعلومات ناقصة، أو يعني أحيانا تكون صعب أو إحراج ما تقدر تجاوبها. فكنت أقول خلاص نفكر سوا، اللي تبحث في النت أو نجيب موسوعات علمية. فصرت أجيب لهم موسوعات مبسطة اللي هي تعلم معنا وأنا وأنت، مجموعة موسوعات صغيرة، وأوزعها عليهم ويبحثون عن المعلومة.
كيف كانت النتائج؟
البنات صاروا يتنافسون حتى في إحضار أسئلة وإحضار معلومات غريبة، صارت حتى توصلوا لمراحل أعلى من مستويات المرحلة الابتدائية.
يعني رأيتي تحسن في نتائج طالباتك؟
ولله الحمد، يعني أنا دائما طالبات على الامتياز. والله
يتهيأ لي هذا مثال واقعي للعلاقة داخل الصف، يعني هذا اللي احنا نتحدث عنه. شكرا للزميلة. فقط ناخذ آخر مداخلتين. الأستاذ
أتوقع
عفوا الأستاذ، لحظة دكتور. الأستاذ
بسم الله. السلام عليكم.
عليكم السلام ورحمة الله.
من تعليم مكة المكرمة. هل يعتقد الأخ المحاضر من وجهة نظره أنه يقوم الطالب بتقييم المدرس في آخر الفصل الدراسي؟
شكرا. المداخلة الأخيرة دكتور عامر.
هي الحقيقة ليس مداخلة بقدر ما هي خبرة من واقع النظام. أنا كنت بشرف على طلاب التربية الميدانية يمكن قبل 7 أو 8 سنوات. فقلت للطالب المتدرب نغير الوضع اليوم أو هذا الأسبوع، وأنت المتعلم وأحد الطلاب اللي بيتبرع هو المعلم. كانت ردة الفعل إيجابية إلى حد كبير في عملية التخطيط للدرس. الطالب قام بالتخطيط قد يفوق تخطيط المعلم المتدرب. ثم أيضا في عملية الاختبار، كان هناك تجربة أنه الطلاب هم واحد من الطلاب أو مجموعة من الطلاب يكتبوا اختبار يقدمون لمجموعة أخرى، فكانت ناجحة. وأشكر الدكتور محمد على أن أثار النقطة هذه. نحن نقدم بعض البرامج من الواقع الحقيقي في الميدان. التجربة في جانب الإدارة، أنا قرأت مرة من المرات أنه فيه أحد مديري المدارس قام بتكليف واحد من الطلاب بإدارة المدرسة اليوم كامل، ولنا أن نتوقع كيف كانت الإدارة. لقد كانت ناجحة بكل المقاييس. شكرا يا دكتور محمد، شكرا للزملاء.
أخذ وقت إضافي. شكرا لسعادة الدكتور علي، منحنا وقت إضافي وحلات يعني طبعا سعداء بما نسمع. ليش؟ لأن في الواقع هذا الذي يحدث داخل الصف. احنا سمعنا الآن يمكن 3-4 تجارب جميلة من داخل الصف. الزميلة في الدوادمي الدكتور عامر مع طلابه في التربية الميدانية، ما ذكره أحد الأخوة من ناحية تقويم المعلم من طلابه. هذا اعتدنا عليه عندما كنا في الولايات المتحدة الأمريكية. ترى هذا يتم في 10 دقائق، ليس إشكالية يعني فهذه جميعها يمكن أن تتم. ودي أؤكد على شيء في هذه الجلسة، في هذا الحديث الجميل، هو علاقتنا بالطالب داخل الصف نفسه، علاقتنا في الحديث معه، علاقتنا في التعامل مع الطالب. يعني هذا مهم جدا. فإذا أنا بدخل الحصة الأولى، تعرفوا الحصة الأولى عندنا في المدارس مبكرة، يمكن تبدأ عندنا في الرياض يمكن تبدأ 7:15. فإذا بدأت أنا المعلم داخل الصف وأنا زعلان وببدأ حصة فيزيكس ولا ماثيماتكس، يعني إذا أنا ببدأ حصة رياضيات ولا فيزياء وكمان يعني متنرفز، فالطلاب نفسهم يعني ما عندهم الدافعية، فهذه الأمور يعني جميعها تحتاج منا الحقيقة جهد كبير على أساس أن يكون الفصل مريح. فنعطي مدام عندنا بعض الوقت، فخلونا ناخذ أيضا بعض المداخلات على أساس الدكتور يجيب عليها بالمرة ثم نختم. معلش ننتقل. تفضل الزميل.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. أنا أعتقد أنه الخلل اللي في العلاقة بين الطالب والمعلم، ربما إعداد المعلم لا يتضمن شيء بالشكل الكافي عن هذا الموضوع. فموضوع مثلا إدارة الصف لا نجده في كثير من برامج إعداد المعلم لدينا. كيف معروف أن إدارة الصف تحتوي على عناصر التخطيط والتنظيم والتنفيذ والتقويم، وهذه كلها تكون في داخل غرفة الصف. وكثير من المعلمين لا يدركون هذه المهارات ليس بسببهم، ولكن بسبب أنهم لم مرت عليهم أمور أكاديمية علمية قد لا تعطيهم المهارة التي تجعلهم يضبطون العلاقة فيما بينهم، ولدرجة أنهم يتمسكون بالمفهوم القديم أن ضبط الصف أو ضبط العلاقة فيما بينهم يعني أن الطالب لا يتكلم في أثناء الحصة. فطبعا تضمين إعداد المعلمين أو تدريبهم مثل هذه المهارات، مثل إدارة الصف أو كيف يتعامل المعلم مع الطالب بطريقة تحقق الهدف المنشود من العملية التربوية والتعليمية داخل الصف أو داخل المدرسة ككل، بإذن الله أنا أتوقع أنه نحقق الهدف المنشود. شكرا.
شكرا للزميل على هذه المداخلة. والذي أعرفه طبعا بيننا عدد من الزملاء من المسؤولين في الجامعات، طبعا إدارة الصف موجودة ضمن خطط كثيرة ومقررات كثيرة، لكن تأتي الممارسة داخل الصف نفسه من قبل المعلم. هل هو فعلا مارس ما تعلمه في الجامعة؟ هذا موضوع طبعا في أشياء كثيرة غير إدارة الصف أيضا. نأخذ مداخلة أو مداخلتين من القاعة النسائية.
السلام عليكم.
عليكم السلام ورحمة الله.
سميرة الأحمري من إدارة عسير. هناك طلاب مشاكسين يعاني المعلم عادة من التعامل معهم بصعوبة، وفي مقابل ذلك طلاب يعني جادين للتعليم. هل أسلوب المعلم يكون بنفس المستوى مع كلا النوعين؟ شكرا.
شكرا. مداخلة أخرى من القاعة النسائية.
وضح الشامري من محافظة رفح. سؤالي هو: ما دور مدير المدرسة في تفعيل وتوثيق العلاقة بين المتعلم والمعلم؟ وشكرا.
شكرا. ناخذ آخر مداخلتين من هذه القاعة. تفضل زميلنا. لا، هناك.
سعد القرني, supervisor, Asir region. This question should be in the morning, but I couldn't ask you, Doctor. Dr. Darami. We used to train our teachers at the beginning of the year many strategies to use it during the year. But when we go to visit them, we notice that they still using the traditional way. It is the delivery way. What can we do for them, please?
شكرا. آخر مداخلة من هذه القاعة.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. حمد المشاري، إدارة التعليم منطقة القصيم. أقول مما يقوي الإبداع بين المعلم والطالب حقيقة هو أن تستشعر أن هؤلاء الطلاب يوما من الأيام سوف يصيرون في أماكن مثلا حساسة، مثلا وزراء، مثلا علماء، مثلا مهندسين. هذا مما يجعل المعلم حقيقة يحفزه إلى الإبداع ولا ينظر إلى الطلاب بأنه نظرة دونية. هذا مما يحبط الطلاب، وإنه سوف يوما من الأيام سوف يذكرون المعلم إما بخير وإما بغير ذلك. ولا زالت في أذهاننا المعلمين حقيقة الذين أبدعوا وجعلوا إبداعات وتشجيع، والتشجيع هو الأساس مما يحفز الطلاب ويجعلهم يتقدمون. التشجيع حتى ولو كان أخطأ الطالب شجعه، فإنه بإذن الله سوف يتفوق. نعم، جزاكم الله خير.
شكرا للزملاء على هذه المداخلات القيمة، وهذه المداخلات تؤكد على حسن العلاقة بين المعلم وبين طلابه والمعلمة وطالباتها. نعطي الوقت للدكتور على أساس الإجابة على هذه المداخلات. تفضل دكتور.
Thank you very much. There are many questions. Some of them are comments for us to think together, action research, reflecting. And some of you mentioned very good practices, which I think need to be reinforced, need to be encouraged, need to be taken by other people on board as well. That's why we are here, to learn from each other, the good practices, and of course to unlearn the bad practices that we may have. In terms of difficult students and good students, yes, of course, you will inevitably have good students, and sometimes you will have disruptive or difficult students. But I think, again, the management, here comes the role of the management and the teacher to look for intervention methods. You've got to diagnose what is the problem and find, relevant and appropriate solution to that problem as well. In terms of some of the students who are lagging behind, probably I think one of the sisters, mentioned, how do you motivate them? By giving them tasks, maybe some homework, sometimes in the class, you give extra few minutes, to make sure that they are on track. What I observed in Scotland, for example, in schools, primary schools, one class is divided into probably 3. Those who are excellent, they'll put them there. Those who are in the middle, they'll put one corner. Those who are like this, another corner. So you will naturally, as one of our colleagues said here, but you learn by habit. Okay, very good students, I will try to be there. So you will fight to make sure that you are excellent in mathematics, excellent in English, and excellent in sciences. So those who are doing very well, we cannot just stop them. We have to encourage them. And those who are not, also we encourage them by making sure that they come to that high level. So this we normally do to try to encourage both difficult students and also good students. In terms of the management of class, that's very important. And also allowing our students to own the learning, to be owners of learning. They own learning. They are partners of learning. So this is very important. As young, even if they are very young, but we inculcate in them, we develop in them at this early age that they are owners. You give them some tasks, and the more they grow, you give them more tasks. You allow them to present. For example, our colleague said here, for example, students managing the school for one day, for example, half a day. The class also, for example, we say, okay, tomorrow you will present. Particularly secondary school, high school, you will present on, for example, Arabic literature, the history of Arabic literature, a little bit. Something on early mathematicians, for example, how mathematics developed, for example. So you give them some work, and that I think will encourage them to really learn and also encourage. In terms of feedback, there are two kinds of feedback: formal feedback and informal feedback. Informal feedback, you can ask your students, how do you think my course has been? Is it good? Yes. What areas are good, you enjoy the most? What areas do you think I can improve? I thought, for example, something on foreign policy, for example. Something on methods of dealing with Islamic sources, for example. Somebody will tell me, it's very theoretical. Can we make it some practical solutions? So you have to balance here, go back and make some practical examples of that particular thing. So this is a way of reviewing your area. So feedback could be formal and informal. So the formal one, is being done by the school. There are questions, for example. You can also involve the students in designing the feedback, for example. And also one of the things you can also do in the committees. In your committees, bring student representatives. We have representatives on academic affairs, on curriculum development, on this, of course, at a high level, maybe secondary school. Of course, you cannot bring in, kindergarten schools, students in this, but maybe probably middle school, high school, you can bring them, involve them. You take their feedback because they will speak on behalf of the students. Maybe primary 1, Form 5, they have a representative. Form 6, they have a representative. Maybe Thanawiya, Ula Thanawiya, for example, Thani Thanawi, and so on and so forth. So they have a representative. So the general sounding, the sounding of the students, what they feel about a particular thing. I think this will improve a lot our styles, our techniques, our methodologies, and this will improve inevitably learning and teaching. Thank you very much.
شكرا دكتور. يعني بيننا عدد من الزملاء من المديرين المدارس ومن المديرات ومن المشرفين ومن الأكاديميين، وأنا أقول نساعد الزميل المعلم داخل الصف على أن تكون العلاقة طيبة وحسنة، والذي يحدث داخل الصف يعني شيء مهم جدا في عملية التعليم والتعلم. يعني مرات هناك فهم خطأ في ترتيب جلوس الطلاب داخل الصف، في من يعتقد أن احنا إذا الطلاب مرصوصين بشكل رأسي أو أفقي وضابطين الفصل وما فيه شيء يتحرك في الفصل، أن هذا هو. لا، ليس هذا. وبعدين اللي لاحظناه في المدارس أيضا من خلال الزيارات للطلاب داخل الصفوف، تجد مثلا الأطفال الصغار اللي بالمرحلة الأولية تجدهم يتحركون من مكان إلى آخر، فبعض المرات يتبادر لذهن المعلم أن هذا هو يشاكس، كما سمعت هذه الكلمة، أو يشاغب، أو له ما يقصد هذا في الحقيقة نوع من التطور اللي يحصل عنده، التطور المعرفي، أو فيما يسمى بالكوجنيتيف ديفلوبمنت، وهو بسرعة عنده، فهو فجأة يكون هناك واقف عند السبورة أو في مكان آخر لا شعوريا يحدث هذا من النمو السريع الذي يحدث عند المتعلم. يعني في ختام هذه الجلسة وهذا الحديث الجميل من سعادة الدكتور، شكرا لمحدثنا الدكتور الحاج على هذه المحاضرة القيمة، شكرا لمقرر هذا اللقاء الأستاذ عبد الهادي، شكرا لكم جميعا على حضوركم لهذه الجلسة، وتحياتي لكم محدثكم الدكتور محمد العسيري، والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.